So in this chapter 2, we're going to be looking at different ways to display the two main types of variables that we talked about. In chapter 1, we talked about, besides who, what, when, where, why, and how, we talked about two different types of variables. So we had the categorical variables. The categorical variables are things like race, gender, religion, things that you can put people in categories when you're filling out a survey kind of or questionnaire type thing. These are check the box things, eye color, hair color, things like that. And then we talked about quantitative variables, which are things that you measure. So height, weight, distance, speed, that kind of thing. And so in this chapter, in this video in particular, the first video for this chapter, we're going to look at how to display categorical variables. So the first thing that we need to talk about is what's called the area principle. And this is basically kind of like when you look at a map. If you look at a map of the United States, bigger states take up a bigger area. Smaller states take up a smaller area. It's kind of the same idea. So the area principle just says the area occupied by a part of the graph should correspond to the value it represents. So here is an example of a bar graph where we have final exam grades based on the letter grade that you get, categorical variable, and maybe you might call it an ordinal variable, but definitely categorical. And you can see that the taller the bin is, the more people got that letter grade. So one thing to point out with these, if we can make all bars have the same width, so all bars should have the same width. And then when we, same. So when all the bars have the same width, then the height is what corresponds to the value. And then we don't have to worry about the area because they all have the same width. We can just worry about the height. So that's one way, and we'll talk about bar charts more in a minute. Another way is frequency tables. So a frequency table is a table whose first column displays each category, and second column shows the frequency. So this table here is an example of a frequency table. And so this data is from the Titanic, takes all the passengers that were on the Titanic and breaks them up by ticket class. So we had 325 first class tickets to an 85 second class tickets and so on. So then we have a relative frequency table, and the relative frequency table is similar to a frequency table, but displays percents instead of totals. So we'll convert this frequency table to a relative frequency table here. And of course, first thing you need to do before you can do that is we need to add up these four numbers, and that comes to 2201. So 2,201 passengers on the Titanic. And let's break down what percent were in each class. So of course, we'll take 325 divided by 2201, and that comes to 14.8%. So 14.8% We'll go there. And we can do the rest, do the remaining categories the same way. So 285 over 2201, that comes to 12.9%. 706 divided by 2201 comes to 32.1%. And then 885 divided by 2201, that would be 40.2%. And then, of course, we add all these up. You can add that up yourself if you like, and you get 100.0%. So, of course, all the categories should add up to 100%. Now, it is possible because if you did these calculations with me, you would notice that it's not exactly 12.9%. It's not exactly 14.8. We did round. So it is possible for the total to be, say, 99.9% or 100.1%. And the reason is because if you're rounding all of these up, then you're going to be adding a little bit to the percent as you go. And then when you add up all those little bitty percents that you cut off here, you might have an extra 1/10% or lose a 1/10%, as the case may be. So don't worry if you add them up and you get 100.1, 99.9, that's okay. If you add it up and you get 105, then something went wrong because you should not have it be that far off. But a little bit extra, a little bit less is perfectly fine. All right, so let's talk about bar charts. So bar charts just display the frequency of each category. And like we said a minute ago, all bars should have the same width. And what that does, like I said a minute ago, then the height corresponds to the frequency. And the other thing to notice, and this will be important when we talk about histograms in the next video, we need a gap between each of the bars. So that way, that kind of indicates that we're talking about categorical variables. And the other thing is, with most categorical variables, the order that you list the categories usually doesn't matter. Like I said this in one of the chapter 1 videos. If you take a particular categorical variable like religion and you ask somebody, so what are the different religions, then they're probably, if you ask 2 different people that question, they'll probably list religions in different orders because there's not an order to list them unless you go alphabetically. But even then, you'll skip some will be left out, whatever it is. So typically with categorical variables, the order doesn't matter that you're listing them. Now, obviously, first, second, third crew, that's kind of an order that most people would go with, but it's not important. Is the point? So it should have gaps between all the bars, and that helps to quickly identify that you're looking at a categorical variable. And then so we have the frequency bar chart here, and these heights will correspond to how many are in each category, of course. And then we have the relative frequency bar chart, and just like with the relative frequency table, we're talking about percent. So anytime you see the word relative in this class, we're going to be talking about percents instead of totals. And so another thing to notice, now the scale is different on this axis because we're looking 0 to 40%. 40.2% was the highest category. Here we have 0 to 1,000. And so the shape is the same, essentially, between the frequency bar chart and the relative frequency bar chart. All right, and then last type we'll look at for categorical variables is the pie chart. So the pie chart just presents each category as a slice, a circle or a pie. So each slice is proportional to the whole. And we've all seen pie charts, so I don't think we need to spend too much time on this, but you can kind of see the same information. You can visually see which categories were more, which were less. Sometimes it's a little bit trickier. This one has a number, so that helps. But if you don't have numbers, then it can be a little bit tricky to sometimes to see which is absolutely the biggest category, which is absolutely the smallest, because like aside from the numbers, these two categories look pretty similar. So it might be a little bit difficult to tell which one is bigger or smaller, and if you did not have these numbers there. So that's one kind of disadvantage to the pie chart, but it is a way to look at categorical data. And then think before you draw. So you always need to ask: is the variable categorical? Is the variable quantitative? Is the variable categorical? And then the other thing you need to pay attention to is with categorical variables, the categories should not overlap. So whenever you're looking at categorical data, each individual in your data set will fit in exactly one category, and one and only one. So that's just something to remember. All right, so we'll pick up with the quantitative on the next video.